I'm Ryan Mayfield. You can ask me anything.
Careful, Omeed, we're live.
Ryan, what?
Yeah, we are live.
Oh, sorry.
And with that, welcome everybody. We have folks joining in, so appreciate you taking your lunchtime with us here. As people are signing in, this is Ask Mayfield Anything, and today we're going to be going through commercial markets, talking about taking the systems approach to our installations, designs, installations, and so as we're going along, this is very much meant to be a interactive. Ask us questions. We want to interact with you all, and so what we do ask though is that you put your questions in the Q&A section, not the chat section. It's much easier for us just to manage, make sure that we're getting through all that, all of your questions. If there's a question that you have as we're going along, feel free to ask it. Don't need to save it to the end. We will reserve some time at the end for some Q&A, but very much enjoy, and it's helpful for everybody as we're going right along to answer those. So with that, I'll go ahead and jump on in. And so I'm Ryan Mayfield. I'm founder, CEO of Mayfield Renewables. And so thank you very much for joining us here with our AMA. And I see another question already coming in. Yes, we're recording this, and everybody will get an email with the link to the video recording. So if you have to step away early or something, we will get that to you. Today, I'm joined by Laurel Hamilton, the director of our technical services at Mayfield Renewables, and Omeed Badkoobeh, the CEO and founder of Yotta Energy. And so take a second, and I'll have you both introduce yourselves and say hello to the group. So Laurel, you want to
Sure.
introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Laurel. I've been with Mayfield Renewables for almost 2 years. Prior to that, I was in the installation world. So started and ran a branch of a solar installation firm for residential and small commercial scale. Got involved in some energy storage as well, but really kind of wore all the hats related to a small installation firm. And at Mayfield, I am the director of technical services. So I'm really working with a lot of manufacturers as well as educators across the industry to try to support quality systems and new products.
Cool. Omeed, you want to? I figured you would give a much better introduction of yourself than I could. So.
Thanks, Ryan. I think you did good. But hi, guys. My name is Omeed Badkoobeh. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Yotta Energy. We are a clean energy tech startup based in Austin, Texas. I've been in solar now for 15 years, which is a long journey, and I still love it every day, which is why I'm out here in the sun next to this waterfall.
Great. So excited to have both Laurel and Omeed talk with us. We're going to go through a lot of some of the things that Yotta has, kind of the systems approach, and kind of what their take and how their design installation approach on systems. Commercial systems is specifically what we're focused here on today. I don't know why that's not working. So real quick, before we jump in, about Mayfield Renewables, we're a technical consultancy. And so a lot of you may be familiar with us. We do a fair amount of system design and engineering. So commercial, industrial, small scale utility, PV, and solar plus storage system design is one of our core focuses. We also do a fair amount of education and training, some systems or classes, things similar to this. I've been teaching the NABCEP NEC class since NABCEP started doing their continuing ed conference 12 or 13 years now. And then I've been teaching solar design installation even longer than that. And then we have technical consulting, and microgrid support. So we have some consulting that we do with both manufacturers and contractors to help with project and product specific type systems. So that is, if we have more information or resources to show you at the end how you can get a hold of us if you have questions on that. So with that, let's jump into unlocking commercial markets, a systems approach to products and design. So that's what we're really here to talk about today. So I was going to have Laurel kind of kick us off here, talking about some of the market challenges and just some of the things that we're all facing here as we're trying to get systems on C&I spaces.
Yeah, so this is really the crux of what this webinar is all about. Commercial market has been tricky to break into in comparison to residential and then the much larger scale, utility scale markets. And there's several reasons for that. There's always more complex asset ownership, property ownership. The financial modeling of the ROI for solar or solar plus storage is a lot trickier than residential and in some cases utility scale. And the folks who are installing them, it's kind of out of their skill set that they've been trained on. And so often folks are a little bit overwhelmed, I would say, by this market. There hasn't been an easy in for a number of reasons, both between the incentives haven't quite been there, payback needs to be much faster, the financial assistance in terms of financing hasn't been as robust as it has or it's developed really for residential markets. And then I would say more recently, and as there has been more and more commercial installations, there have been some safety concerns that have been brought up in the news. And I think that raises some concerns and some, in the industry and in the business owner side of things where they don't really know the products and the solutions, they're having to trust the manufacturers and the contractors who are putting that on their property. And so they're considering that those news articles and don't have all the information all the time. And so I do think that is something that we should maybe talk about a little bit here, given there has been some news more recently and it's a bit top of mind and should be addressed and not ignored.
Yeah, and we have some stuff on that slide that we can talk about that later, but that's definitely, and I know, Omeed, you're not too shy about talking about this. And so there's, the whole CNBC article that recently came out on, the Amazon fires and things like that. And then, of course, there was previous to that, there were news reports on Walmart and things like, so large, big names, companies that are putting in large PV systems, and these safety concerns are, coming up. And we even, once that story broke out, we had customers sending us links to it, asking us questions that, is that system that we're putting on our roof really safe? What are the problems? What can we do to avoid it? And so those are some of the things I think, we'll talk about definitely here today. But so I know, Omeed, like I said, I know you're not too shy about talking about it. If you had other things you thought.
Yeah, I see it as a big opportunity, but just to pick up from where Laurel left off, the C&I market is challenging, but who doesn't love a good challenge? It's also ripe for opportunity. Right now, we're about 4% global usage of solar energy. In the United States, 75% of all electrical consumption happens at commercial industrial buildings. Yeah, there's only 4% of commercial buildings that have solar today. Right? So if we're really serious about solar and powering the grid of the future with renewables and EV charging, we got to figure out the C&I market. And that's the challenge that our company has taken on. And we're building compelling products to solve this market. And then there's timing. Timing is always everything. And we think the timing is right. Rising prices of power, new incentive structures, new financing structures, compelling products. You're ready for growth.
Awesome. So, touching on that, I added a bit here about opportunities. So while there are a lot of challenges, really the reason we thought this was a good time to have this particular webinar topic is because of the opportunities that are there's a confluence right now in addressing all of those challenges. So around the financial side, there's a lot more incentives available. Incentives have been extended and at a higher rate. for electric vehicle charging infrastructure, for solar, for energy storage, all three. And then there's also a lot more financing solutions available for businesses and commercial markets.
And along, I mean, yeah, and all those things are, playing a factor into it. And then just the market itself. I mean, people are, the going and doing, offsetting demand charges, things like that, where we have products that are now available to us that can help make those financial incentives more lucrative to the building owners. And so this is definitely, yeah, like you were saying, Laurel, confluence of many things that are bringing these C&I markets and these opportunities, bringing them all together.
So around product solutions, that's kind of why we had Omeed join this call, and how there really is a good opportunity in looking at things with more of a systems approach, benefits around safety and financial. So with that.
Yeah, exactly. So Omeed, you want to talk us through that a little bit?
Sure. I can talk for 3 hours on this stuff. So, yeah, we said we looked at the space and we realized that the C&I market had a lot of potential. There was never really anyone focused in on it. But how do we build the evolution of the torch that I think was handed to us, right? In the industry, it was once a crazy idea to put microinverters on a rooftop. Power electronics, they'll never work. And today, it's about 90% of the residential market uses power electronics, microinverters. You don't see a lot of fires on residential rooftops. Microinverters are inherently very safe. But then we were pushed to the next limit, and it's, well, if we can do that with a microinverter and complex power electronics, why can't we take a safe LFP cell and package it with some really advanced thermal management and fireproofing and make a modular-based solar plus storage solution? Everyone in the industry acts like they do solar plus storage, but it's usually solar, and storage. At Yotta, our entire solution is only solar plus storage. You can't do one without the other. Or you can do the solar first and have it storage ready. And so think of us as a decentralized architecture for solving solar plus storage. We have a panel level battery. First product is 1 kilowatt hours. It's completely augmentable. So you can install it from day one on some amount of the array, or you can come back at any point in the future when you use the Yotta dual power inverter, the DPI, and retrofit storage using our partnership with PanelCall and the racking system. We didn't stop there. We looked at the growth of this market and realized that a lot of the demand for C&I was going to come from EV charging, and that EV charging literally creates the demand charge, which would create the demand for the battery. And it only makes sense to do them together. And so if you're going to be doing solar plus storage, why would you not go ahead and install EV charging? And if you're going to be doing EV charging, why the heck would you not install solar plus battery? And today, with the various financing structures, I mean, you can roll all of this into a simple PPA structure, usually less expensive than what the customer is purchasing power from the utilities. So the big question is, why not? Why not do these? And as we have a 2 to 3x increase in demand for consumption of electricity driven by electric vehicles, let's make sure we power that with solar. Why default to other forms of energy? And the one thing I want to say here is, like, some people will say, well, why not just do utility scale, right? If we only do utility scale, we're back into the same problem. We have a centralized grid system that's prone to issues, right? The most effective place to absorb energy is where it's created. And, that's why the C&I market is really attractive to us. We see it as a huge potential. There are some EPCs that only focus on this, but we've realized that there's so many EPCs that predominantly do residential, but have so many opportunities. And if they just had the right technology, the right support, which Yotta brings, and of course Mayfield brings as well, they can tap into this market potential. And it's great. Like, why put 10 solar panels on Miss Jones' house when you can put 1,000 on one building?
So Omeed, I'm going to ask.
Good.
So I was just going to ask the question. So on safety, and I'm sure you get this a lot, so I'm sure you have an answer ready for this. But and then we have a slide in a bit. But talk about the batteries going up on a roof. I mean, like you mentioned that, when Enphase came out on the market, I remember being at SPI, when Enphase came out and made their big release, everybody was either gung-ho ready to put it on every building, or they were like, that's never going to work. And so I guess, similar thing by putting a battery up there. I know we'll get into kind of what that structure looks like. But I guess, how do you approach that, or what do you have to say about, putting the battery up on the roof in a pretty harsh environment?
Yeah. So I would say we're crazy. But in being crazy, we found a solution to make it extremely safe. We sleep next to a lithium battery every night. At least I do. We have it on our watch, right? And if we can make it safe there, if we use the right technology, we can make it safe in a modular product on a rooftop. The thing people don't realize is that the issue with lithium, and there's many chemistries. So, talking about lithium battery in one category is like talking about gasoline and jet fuel. So we use LFP. LFP stands for lithium iron phosphate. It's a very safe chemistry. There are cells that have been proven that even through puncture or thermal runaway, they only off gas, right? But then that is the entirety of our product. Is we've made a modular battery system that is extremely safe and in basically fireproof battery. During our UL 9548 testing, which the results will go public soon, people will see just how safe it is. We had forced thermal runaway. First of all, we couldn't do thermal runaway until we got how many excess joules of energy into that thing to cause thermal runaway. And then when it did, you could touch the outer surface of that product and it didn't, cause any damage. And that's what we have to prove. And we're going to prove that it's extremely safe, it's extremely modular, and it's far less risky than putting a bunch of batteries in one location. That, to me, is what is dangerous, right?
So the next slide actually is a good one to talk about the battery structure itself and safety. Oh, actually, maybe it's one more slide. Sorry.
Yeah, well, it comes in one more.
Yeah, we're kind of skipping ahead.
We'll circle back to it. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. I got excited.
We do have a couple questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the Yotta system 3-phase 480 volt capable? That's one question.
Great question. So we just launched our new 3-phase microinverter Friday. So prior, we've been using a 4-port microinverter, but we were limited to a single phase, combining them into 3. We just launched within strategic partnership with AP Systems, our new 3-phase DPI that can work backwards with any solar leaf or forwards. And it's the first native 3-phase output microinverter. It's a quad. There's a 208 and a 480 version. It's free wire. It is similarly priced to the cost of a string inverter plus rapid shutdown plus the labor, but you don't have all the headaches and the risks. We think it's going to do really, really well in the C&I market. You can scale it up to 3-4 megawatts. On the 480 version, you can go up to 44 panels per 30 amp branch circuit. So it becomes a very compelling offer. And as we talked about safety, it's all low voltage. It is never any high voltage DC. Every solar panel is paralleled into this inverter, and the solar leaf is low voltage as well, parallel into that input. And you're only dealing with AC, which is far easier to make safe with relays.
Great. Good answer.
And that's one of the things, and I was excited when I heard about that, Omeed, just because we, on the design side, we actually get the request a lot from folks. Generally, it's smaller commercial, but there can be larger commercial where they like the idea of the microinverters, or they've, for whatever reason, they've been sold on the microinverters, but there hasn't been a good option because it's been single phase combined to 3-phase. Currents get a little bit out of control, current values, and so it becomes much harder. So yeah, I was excited to hear about that product. So I think that'll be a good fit for what we have.
So before we jump to the next slide, I do just want to touch on the very top points here, since they're kind of fundamental to this whole webinar. Just that the fact adding energy storage to solar for commercial markets is going to help that financial case because of utility rate structures. Be able to shift your energy, as well as the fact that energy storage is getting cheaper and there's more incentives for energy storage. So combining the two and dealing with those tricky utility rate structures is going to help make the case. And then adding fleet charging is also going to help your ROI because you're saving on fuel charges.
Correct. And it's and again, when we really analyze the storage market, it's either megawatt hour scale, or nothing, or go home. There was no incremental augmentable approach, right? And what we bring to the market is exactly complete flexibility. So you might have a building today, they want to start with a sample sizing a la carte of storage that might do 50 kilowatt hours, which would be 50 units. And then, 2 years from now, they've ordered they finally received their Ford Lightnings and they want to add a bunch of chargers, and their demand's going to spike. So they call up their EPC and they call up Yotta and say, hey, we'd like to add, another 50 batteries to hedge against this demand charge spike. And you just come there, you click and you lift up the module, you disconnect the MP4 and you add batteries. Right? And so that flexibility brings a tremendous amount of value to the market, because no one else can bring that level of flexibility to the architecture the way we can. Storage is not ready in all markets yet. It doesn't make sense in all markets, but it will at some point. And that's the future proof, and we call it storage ready architecture that we bring.
And I think it's worth pointing out, just so that, because people can, even within the industry, when we talk about storage and what does storage do for you. So in this situation, this is very much demand response. This is helping offset those charges for your product, correct? Omeed, I don't want to speak.
Yeah, demand charge management. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's not a resilience, at least not yet, aspect to it. I know that that's on your roadmap, but I just want to make sure that that's clear for folks as well, so everybody's thinking the same thing. There was that other question, and I see, Omeed, you were starting to answer, but the specific racking, I know PanelClaw is the partner that I've heard about. Are there others that are integrating with this, or is it just PanelClaw at this moment?
We're in talks with others, but we're very happy with PanelClaw. It's, I think, about 60% of the C&I market. It happened by coincidence in a way, but you couldn't have designed a better racking system for our product. The fact that with their Claw FR, you don't want to build the base array of the racking. Everything else is basically tool lift. And so you can come back, click, lift up the module, and augment and add solar leaf at any point. If we went and figured out a better way to make a racking, we would have landed here. So we have a great partnership with PanelClaw, but we'll explore others as well.
Okay.
So
cool.
And they're made in U.S., which is great. And they're set up pretty well here with the new IRA bill. So
nice. Okay. So let's move on to this next slide, talking about this holistic system approach. We've touched on it a little bit, but if you could talk a bit more about that. Yeah.
So what we've come to realize in not just the C&I market, but just in the industry in general, and the EPCs, the customers, the solar installers, they want the solution to come from one manufacturer. The main reason is that when stuff goes wrong, there's not finger pointing. And you've seen a lot of that. Even the companies that are part of each other's companies, they start blaming each other for issues. And so it became very clear to us very early on that we had to own the entire solution to make it effective and value-based for our customers. And so we started with the Solar Leaf. We did a strategic partnership with AP Systems. We came out with the DPI. And now we're doing that with EV charging, and all of that is going to be tied into the same ecosystem, which we launched on Friday as well. It's going to be called Yotta Vision, which will be our software platform, and that brings all of this together. And so we are the one de facto provider. The only thing we're not doing is the racking of the modules. But aside from that, our customers come to us. We can do the complete upfront engineering with the help of Mayfield, of course. for them and then give them a full package system. And that brings a lot of value to customers.
The more it's all
And
under one manufacturer, there's also benefits around just maintenance and warranties and one entity to deal with for EPCs now, from my background.
Correct. And we try to make it very easy. You know, a lot of success is not just the technology you create, but how well you take care of your customers. There's some good companies with some leading technology, but they don't take good care of their customers, and eventually they're going to switch over. And then where the EV charging comes in, you know, we've done a couple of projects, and it's all around the corner. EV charging creates the demand. It literally creates the demand charges. And so it creates the demand for the battery storage. And so, and vice versa, if you're going to have EV charging, why not power with solar? Because your costs will get higher. And a lot of folks are embracing that today. It makes total sense to me. If you're going to be doing a full project, why not install EV chargers? And then if you're going to be installing EV chargers, why not be doing solar plus storage in one customer acquisition process, one, you know, engineering process?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've seen on the design side. You know, a lot of EV charging going in simultaneously, but the demand charges are still going to be there. You can't address those with PV alone. And so I think that's one of the things that there's definitely the connection between the two, especially for the consumers. But without that storage, be able to control that demand, I should say, it becomes not necessarily the most financial, the best solution for the customer.
And, you know, in markets like California, if you take a look at commercial utility bills, almost half of the actual bill is demand charges. So, and that's going to happen across the country when more and more systems go out. Utilities are going to find a way to you know, push that revenue loss into demand charges, right? And you know, we're already building something that will hedge against that. So demand charges spike, great. Add in a few more solar leads to that array.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So this other question that Robert put out there, curious, Omeed, before we're about to move into safety and design stuff a little bit more away from, I think, some of the financial. So is this something this split charge where the, you know, tenant pays the utility bill versus the building owner has owns the system essentially? Is there something that you guys have seen to address this in terms of helping the building owners, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been one of the biggest disconnects in the lack of this market, right? In residential, it's a homeowner with an emotional appeal to want to power their home by solar, right? In C&I, the person who's paying the utility bill is usually the tenant who has a 5-year or 7-year lease, and the guy who owns the building is usually a company, and they don't care about solar. But I think that's all changing because commercial, you know, REITs and property owners are realizing that there's a lot of potential value on their rooftops that they can tap into. And so I think when the price of power increases, which it is everywhere, and the demand for EV charging, like, it's going to become a feature that building owners want to put into their buildings, right? And then I think that's where our architecture is even more effective, because a lot of these asset owners who own these systems through 20-year PPAs, they want to be able to monitor the data, right? And what we give them is down to panel level data. Not only for a solar module, but for the energy storage. And that's profound. I mean, I can't tell you how many systems are out there that are probably not running, and no one just knows, right? Or you might have had a faulty module in a string, and then that's the limiting factor of that entire string for the rest of its life, right? We all know that happens. So with our system, like, if it's not connected right from day one, you will know. You can dial in and see if it's a DC connection issue or an AC connection issue. You get to compare modules to modules. You get to see, you know, batteries against batteries. So it gives you that data that I think everything is going to be driven by data at some point in the future. So if I were an asset owner and I want to own an asset for 20 years and charge against it, I'd want to see everything.
Yeah, agreed. So, helpful to addressing some of those challenges for different customers and potential issues financially. Okay, so I did jump ahead a little bit earlier, so we'll come back. We'll loop back around on this. So again, kind of the safety issue around. So safety is a big part of. Well, it's very much top of mind for a lot of people, especially when we're talking about putting PV systems up on roofs. So, Omeed, you already talked about going through the 9540A test, or the testing protocol for 9540A, and being able to see that this is a very safe system. So kind of now that we have this breakdown, this visual, kind of help us understand what that battery looks like and how you're achieving that.
Yeah, I mean, we started with safety with the cell selection, so and then the verification of the cell and all the testing to the cell level, and then we did safety testing on the pack level. And then from there, we've done safety testing on the product level. And there's just a safety inherent in the size, of a 1 kilowatt hour is extremely safe versus having 500 kilowatt hours next to each other, But then the actual thermal technology that validates this product to be on a rooftop also serves as a safety technology. So we use a ceramic on the outer system for thermal management. That ceramic is also a fireproofing product. And so even if you force, which we had to for Yotta 9540A, you force thermal runaway, it does not affect the exterior of the product whatsoever. You simply off gas a bit, right? It was so safe that our test engineer said, I would sleep next to this thing during a thermal runaway. You got to tell people about this. And I'm like, okay. So, and we'll prove that over time. It is counterintuitive. People think of lithium batteries as being unsafe, right? If they're engineered correctly and you have the proper safety mechanisms, it can be extremely safe. Again, we sleep next to one. Most of us sleep next to one every night. And each product has its own BMS built in.
Great. That's kind of where I was going, or I was going to ask, what those, your BMS, what the other, how this fits in, I guess, into a system as a whole. And we actually can talk about that, I think, here on this next slide. I think it helps show it a little bit better. So,
yeah.
So in your system, we're showing it here as kind of this, design considerations, and just kind of showing this single line here. And so you were saying earlier, the DPI inverters can go in with or without this storage. And so we can go PV direct to the inverter. If you're installing storage now or later, the storage goes on the DC side of the inverter, correct?
Correct. So it's DC coupled, so we call it PV coupled storage.
Sure. So you're on the DC side. And so you're able to go in, as you mentioned, in using this in the racking system and make those connections. And so question for you on that, Omeed, is, so we're showing this, fully populated. You can do one battery, right. You can do 4 batteries per inverter. It doesn't really matter. So the system's going to be relatively agnostic in that sense. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and that's really, like, that flexibility it's really important. Because not every building is right for storage from day one, but if you had a product where you can start with some amount and then come back and add more very easily, it makes a compelling case without having to think about where it goes, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the big things that we've been finding whenever we're doing solar plus storage. That's one of the very first questions. Where are we going to put in? Do we need to create fire safety plans? Can we put it inside? What is the fire rating? And then if you have to put it outside, what are the temperature ratings? All those kinds of things. So it definitely adds a level into the design consideration that we just have to take into account.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, what drew me to create this concept, and the answer is I did a lot of battery systems very early on. And the most complicated thing always was figuring out where you're going to put the batteries in a project. So, and so this solves for it. Now, are we the solution for every application? No. If you have a battery room in a building and it's really close to the service entry and it's much more cost effective and you have a safe solution, that's not our market. But, we think that a majority of the market want storage if it can be done simply in a different way, and out of the tenant way, basically, which is on the rooftop.
Sure. So with your new inverters, I've heard the numbers, but I can't remember them. How many with let's stick to the 480 systems? How many of these inverters, the 480 and DPI inverters, can you fit on a single trunk cable?
I gotta do some quick 10. So you can do 10 per 30 amp trunk cable, which is 44 modules per 30 amp trunk cable.
Okay.
On the 480, and I think the 208 is somewhere around 6 or 7.
Okay. So being able to, I mean, the flexibility, I guess, there is kind of where I was going in terms of having greater number of modules up on the roof that we're working with. And then kind of coming back to the safety stuff, one of the things I'll go back to, since it's the most recent, the CNBC article that's getting republished everywhere, it seems like, on the Amazon systems. And some of the things they talked about there, they didn't give us, unfortunately, and I think this is part of just the issue with, our thermal events being reported or our fires being reported in the industry as a whole. We're not given a whole lot of, very specific information. What do we change in order to stop these, I guess, is one of the things.
Yeah.
One of the things that's come up a lot, and this was in the Amazon stuff, this was in the Walmart reports and things like that, connector mismatch. And we even have a requirement in the National Electrical Code now, 2020, says you have to have connectors have to be listed of the same manufacturer or listed to be compatible. And most manufacturers say that compatibility is not, there is no such thing as compatibility or listed compatibility. So that means that you have to use the same connectors. And that's just one of the main things I think that keeps getting repeated in these fire issues or these fire reports, is that the connector mismatch. Wire management is always a big one as well. And that there's not a whole lot manufacturers can do on the wire, and they can help with the wire management, but as far as module and MLPEs go. So the connector one is a big one. And obviously, hopefully, a Yotta inverter going to a Yotta battery is going to have the same connector. So you're eliminating that. But then, as we were talking about before the call started, just the lower the voltage, the less likelihood you are of these arc events. And so, absolute, removal, probably not, but, we have lower voltages, single module inputs. And so there's definitely a safety aspect to that.
Right. Yeah, Ryan, I think as an industry, it's really important for us to be honest and open about what causes issues. Otherwise, we damage the opportunity for all of us, and we're working against the very nature of adding more solar, right? We use the same manufacturer for all the connections, from modules to solar leads to inverters, and then we're in AC. But even if we had mismatched connectors, you cannot arc and cause a fire at 48 volts. It's just impossible physics, right? And I think as an industry, we have to be honest about what's causing these fires. Is it just mismatched connectors? Could it be rapid shutdown devices themselves? Even I would venture to say, even if you have exactly the same connectors, over time, if for some reason something goes, everything's manufactured. If water intrusion happens in that connector of 9 years of high voltage, 600 volts or 1,000 volts, it may cause a fire, right? Why we think our architecture and the inverters are very timely, right? Not only do we give module level data, flexibility to add storage, you don't have to worry about where you're mounting the inverters, but we basically eliminate this risk. And that's probably worth more than a couple cents per watt, the delta between a string inverter than using a microinverter in the C&I market. At least we think so. We've talked to installers. Some of our customers have adopted this fully now because they said they had a fire, and they said they will not even risk that again, on their building. So we think it's a big opportunity. It's safer, gives more value. Why not do it?
Yeah. So it's I think the stories that are coming out about fires are somewhat, I don't want to say unfortunate or something, but it definitely is something that we need to address, look at, and understand as an industry. And I think you're exactly right. The connectors you could have to multi-contact, connectors that are going into each other. But over time, there could be some water intrusion. Maybe it didn't get clicked in right. So there's a number of things that can happen. So just saying that you have the same connectors isn't going to be the ultimate solution.
It's not the ultimate solution, and it's you have a choice to not have high voltage DC on a rooftop, then why not take it? So we've had customers switch over to us who have had RSD devices catch on fire, and so again, people think, oh, microinverter is more points of failure. It's actually less points of failure than having a string inverter plus rapid shutdown devices. There's more points of failure there than there are in our architecture with the microinverter. And before you leave a site, you can check visually that all the connectors are connected properly. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. And so we think it's as more as it catches on and people see the delta of difference and value, they're going to adopt microinverters in the CNI market. It makes total sense, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's definitely, as our industry is maturing, and we've been seeing these shifts, and it's definitely interesting to see how manufacturers are coming on to meet the demands for the different applications, and this is definitely one of them that I see as having a good potential of catching on and being adopted much more widely. We haven't had very good solutions up until this point.
Right.
So there was a question, and going to go backwards a little bit about batteries. So I think the question is, what about the non-charging below 32 degrees for lithium-ion batteries was the question. So is that something, so low temperatures, how do your batteries react to that, and what's the issue there?
Yeah, so every one of our batteries is basically like a human body. Keeps it between a certain set point. So our batteries never see temperatures below 10 degrees Celsius. We have heat pads built in between the cells that are controlled by the BMS. And by keeping the batteries above, freezing point, you're actually getting more energy out of it, right? Now, in the event that you're in a market that you have 3 feet of snow on your modules and there's no power coming in, there's no use of the batteries anyway, then over some time, our system will be smart enough to just go into dormancy and wait for production to come back up, right? But we will be solving this even in our future roadmap on, having a bi-directional system that can even work in, long times, even in snow-covered panels.
So is it using?
So we have all of this. Again,
I was just going to ask. So it's using power from the utility or something to do that, or is this just from the array? How do you power up the heater?
Right now it's just from the array.
Okay.
And the batteries themselves. In the future, it'll be both. But it doesn't take a whole lot. So our heating within our thermal management takes about 5 watts of energy. Right?
Okay.
To keep the batteries above 10 degrees Celsius. So we don't even get to 0, which is close to 32 Fahrenheit, because the colder the batteries get, the more they lose their energy. So it's kind of a net loss game. So we optimize the battery. That's all built into every product.
Okay.
And the same thing on the hot side. That was really the first question that we were solving for is, it gets hot on the rooftop. Well,
right.
It actually can get hotter in a garage or a battery mounted to the side of a house. On the rooftop behind a module, we're in shade by default, right? And there's airflow. But with that, we've designed the batteries all the way up to operate up to 65 degrees Celsius, which is about 140 Fahrenheit. Right? And what a thermal technology does is it keeps it right there around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Our batteries don't go above that. And this was I wouldn't have continued the company if we didn't solve that problem. And we didn't solve it with a technology that would last 20 years. Because I installed some of the first microinverters in our industry, and I realized early on, for this to work, you got to make it bulletproof. You got to make it reliable, right?
Sure. So this was a question came in, and I was actually gonna bring this up or ask about this. So we're showing here this control gateway. So is the control gateway, is it a communication device? What is it controlling? And how is this, how does this interact with the system? I guess, are there components that we have to have connection over to the main service panel, CTs to do the demand charge response and that kind of stuff? Is that where this is happening?
Yeah, so we have a Yotta gateway controller, and that controls and picks up the data from the inverters as well as the solar leads, and they can send commands out to the solar leads to do a discharge, right? And that controller can be tied to CT sensors to hedge against demand charges, right? So we have some functionality built into our gateway, but then we also are integrating with other EMS providers as well, like Energy Toolbase's gateway, EMS. So there'll be more dynamic control that we can also bring. And then there's a big question that some that we may know. Another problem why microinverters aren't used in CNI is that if you're doing PLC communications over so many connections, it starts to not work so well. Where you have to have a lot of gateways and repeaters. Ours is a completely Zigbee-based mesh network, and so each battery and every inverter is like a node that communicates with each other, and it's very effective on a flat rooftop.
So it's a wireless connection.
It's a wireless connection, right? And okay. each unit is its own repeater, and so if the one goes down, it goes to the next one.
Okay, so there
was a question earlier about, there was a question about our connectors. Yeah, yes, we use Stavli MC4 on all our connections. So.
So I'm just over here looking at some of these questions. So, as far as the, if there's utility outage right now, these are not grid forming inverters, and so if there was an outage, the system, there would be no islanding of the system. It's a grid direct system, so it would just go down with the rest of the system.
You can AC couple to another grid forming system, and so you can make it islanding with some other technology. But yeah, that's something that we have in our roadmap to be launching a grid forming system as well with a transfer switch product as well.
Sure.
But today we're kind of hitting the values of demand charge management tied to EV charging, time of use shifting. But there's some markets where if you could export during these set hours, you get X amount per kilowatt hour, and all the other ancillary. And then being able to aggregate these sites and sell and do grid services in the future. But we're actively working on our backup architecture because that is an important thing. Right?
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to move over. Did you have anything else to say on that single line or anything, Omeed, on the design or safety issues?
No, I think it was very good.
Okay. So coming up here at the top of the hour, so I just wanted to get into some of these key takeaways. And so I think as we're seeing, and I remember reading actually in even those articles about the Amazon locations, there's talk of CNI, the growth that's happening within the CNI industry. And so with this IRA bill that's been passed, we're definitely seeing it. I'm sure, you're probably getting calls or seeing within the industry, a lot more interest. There's a lot of people that are, I think going to get pushed over the edge there with these incentives, and just how we're seeing, the market that's growing with vehicle charging.
Yeah, it's all. I tell people that the market was going to do extremely well prior to the IRA. Sorry, my headphones ran out. With the IRA, the market's going to be on steroids. So, with the IRA, the rising price of power, electrification of vehicles, more awareness to power with renewables, this market is going to grow exponentially. Financing is now here. All the right ingredients. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, totally. Yep. And so, yeah, so the financing part of it, definitely not my, strong suit, but it's as I've been seeing it, been talking with people, the financing opportunities are, growing, and it seems like there's more and more opportunities there. So I think that's been one of the big
more
hurdles.
money. There's more money looking for places to go and own PV assets than there are PV assets being developed right now. No one should be worried about how do I fund this project for the customer at all. Because I think the big private equity funds, they're realizing that this is the future, to own these distributed, pockets of power plants that could be on all these different rooftops.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just really good investments. They have ROIs that you can count on.
Yeah, it's no longer about just offsetting the building, the payback on that. It's like, what can this system do if you aggregate them? And the price of power is $40 a kilowatt hour, which happens on a constant basis here in Texas. Like, imagine the revenue potential of being able to, export power during one of these events and make money on these systems. Right?
Yep, I agree. And then, just kind of one of the points that we were talking about here is, the safety through design practices, installation practices, very important. Again, we're getting more and more press about that. Hopefully getting, I guess, we don't hear about all the hundreds, millions, whatever systems that are out there that aren't catching fire. It's the few that are. So we have to be really careful about, what those issues are.
We should, and as an industry, we should know exactly what they are so we can address them as quickly as possible, right? So that's what I think. And just to plug for, any EPCs that are listening, like, if you have customers that need financing, Yotta can also bring that to the table. We have a lot of networks, and so we can help bring the financing to the table as well.
That's good to know. Well, great. So there's, we're recording this here the week before RE Plus, formerly SPI. I'm still having a hard time saying RE Plus, but I'm getting better.
I know, same here. I say both, SPI, RE Plus.
Right. So next week, Anaheim. So for those of you that are, calling in, Yotta will have a booth. Mayfield Renewables will be there as well. We'll be, meeting with folks, and there's some other shows that are coming. Real quick, Omeed, what's the road show that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so the road show is an idea we've had for a long time. We're gonna have signups at our booth at SPI, RE Plus. But we want to get out there and meet with the customers. We want to get out there, and so what we're doing in road shows, we'll come out. We have the Yotta van roadshow ready. We'll bring food, catering. We can do everything at your location, and we'll do a demo of our entire system. We'll install it in your parking lot, show you every component, how it gets installed, and then just talk to you about all our services. So we think it's the most effective way to just get out there and meet our customers. So as soon as we plan this out at RE Plus, folks will sign up. We're going to publicize the map, and it's just going to be a fun way for the team at Yotta to get out there and travel the country and meet customers. So.
Cool.
If it works out well, we won't do as big of a booth the next year at RE Plus.
There you go. Cool. Yeah. And so there's other shows, lots of shows coming up end of this year, and then beginning of next year. There's definitely lots of shows coming up, and so we both companies will be there, and excited to see folks, talk with everybody. So
yes, I think this year's RE Plus is going to be jam packed. I think people have been waiting for this for a long time. And,
yeah, no kidding. It's especially for that show to have had to get canceled the way they had to do it. So yes, some of the earlier shows this year were definitely people were itching to go, and I think this is going to be even more so.
Yeah, we're very excited. So I think we're 3648. I don't have that correctly, but I'll follow up. But you'll find us. We have a good sized booth at RE Plus, and the sales team and technical team there ready to answer any other questions that anyone might have. So.
Cool. Well, and speaking of that, so here's, if there's additional questions or comments that come up, here's our contact information. Love to talk with folks if you want to learn more about Mayfield Renewables, or if you want to learn more about Yotta, feel free to reach out to either of us, and we'd be happy to do that. So, Omeed, Laurel, I really appreciate you guys taking the time today. And so, yeah, if there's any last words that you want to have for the group.
Laurel, you want to go first?
No, I mean, I would just also add, we talked a little bit about the design solutions, but Mayfield Renewables has a really strong design engineering team, especially around C&I and energy storage. And I do think that is one of the opportunities of Confluence right now, is that we do have more and more background in those types of systems that before were a little more overwhelming, perhaps. So between the new product solutions and understanding better the best practices and taking what has worked and what hasn't, I think we're in a good position to be implementing those designs better on the front end.
Yeah, and I'm going to say you guys are also fun to work with. So you're nice people. So yeah, my remarks. I think the C&I market is going to have exponential growth. It consumes 75% of the nation's electricity, 35% of carbon dioxide emissions, yet only has 4% solar and less than 0.1% storage today. And how do we solve that? If we really want to make an impact, to deploy more solar, and then we need to get serious about the C&I market and what's to come. And so a lot of the EV charging is going to come from fleets and the C&I market as well. So why not seize this opportunity? The sun is powerful. It's the second most powerful thing after the source, in the universe, after love, I would say. So let's seize the moment. Let's power the energy transition with clean, renewable energy, and let's make the C&I market grow.
Absolutely. And there were a few more questions, so I would just encourage people to reach out. Write down these email addresses and reach out directly. We're all happy to help.
Great. Well, again, thanks. Great. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Omeed, Laurel, for presenting, and look forward to seeing those of you at RE Plus next week. Otherwise, reach out and be happy to help.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.